Hello and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Workplace Wanderer. I think I'm just going through with my whole cohort in this doctoral program because I got another awesome guest this week who is a part of my cohort in the organizational and leadership psychology program that I'm currently in. This is somebody I enjoy talking to. This is somebody who I think brings a lot of insight to our conversations, but also humor. A badass New Yorker vibe too. I want to say a little bit, she can bring some attitude in the best way, not in a negative way, and bring some spice and flavor to conversations, but also very smart, very, very insightful. And I think this is going to be a great conversation. Our topic today will be discussing embracing the new and what that process of discovery is like. And when we talk about discovery, I'm not talking about how lawyers do discovery. I'm talking about personal discovery and self-reflection, self-awareness, and growth, which are all parts of becoming a great leader. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce this week's guest, Cristina Oliveri.
Thank you, Blake. Hi.
It's
Thank you for
weird calling
having
you
me.
Christina. It's
Chris.
Chris. Yeah,
Chris.
Chris. Everyone knows her as Chris. I'm just going to call her that. Well, as always, I like to promote inclusivity. I always ask my guests to take a moment to introduce themselves in whatever way is speaking to you today. So, Chris, if you don't mind, just give us a brief background on who you are and why you're here and what you love.
Well, all right. Well, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're listening to this.
Whenever you're listening to this, yeah.
Whenever you're listening to it. I am Chris Oliveri. I am now based in Maine. I am a New Yorker.
New Yorker.
But I am in the healthcare industry about 20 years in healthcare, and recently stepped away from traditional leadership, healthcare administration role. A lot of my work has been in like practice transformation, healthcare quality, like operations. That's really where a lot of my experience is. But at the core, I just love helping people. I love working with organizations where their mission is, geared towards underserved populations. That's really where, my heart is. So at the end of the day, I love feeling like I've made a difference, not only to a community, but to those that I'm working with. So that's really me in a nutshell. And aside from that, married, got my beautiful two kids. Well, the
Mhm.
dog and the cat. And in my spare time, just love writing. I'm creative and just love, exploring Maine and the trails and running for free snacks and swag. That's what I'm all about.
I would say about half of the year I'm jealous that you live in Maine, and the other half of the year I couldn't stand it. I'm a Florida boy through and through. Yeah, I just could not handle that cold. But I also spent some summers in Maine when I was a kid, and I mean, it's like the most beautiful place
Hmm.
in the country. It's just so
It is
peaceful. I love it.
peaceful and people are so friendly. Like I was very, like it was off-putting at first
Oh
because
yeah.
when we first moved here, I remember I was walking the dog with my husband and people just drive by and they wave, right? So I looked at him, I'm like, are they giving me the finger? And he's like, they're waving, like just like,
Are they
man,
trying to
pump
warn
those
me of
brakes.
something? There's something going on
Like, what
behind
is
me that
this?
I don't see?
This gang that's wearing LL Bean, what is this?
Yeah.
But
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, coming from New York, I can imagine it's a very different lifestyle up there. Down in South Florida, it's basically the new New York, and everybody from New York and the Northeast all come down here. So I'm very familiar with that type of the personality difference. I actually happen to love New Yorkers. I think maybe because I did grow up in South Florida around so many.
mhm.
I love that fast-paced, no BS attitude. Just get directly to the point. I don't need you to be nice to me. And also, what it's also done for me is implant a seed that when anybody is being too nice to me, I think you're trying to get one over on me or trying to get something from me. So
Yeah.
that takes some undoing, especially when I'm traveling the country and going to some of the nicer places around, the more polite places.
It's so true. So true.
Now, I've seen some of the work that you do, some of the areas that you focus specifically in some public speaking or some talking that you've done is regarding DEI, DEIB. Is that something to you in your career that you've focused on implementing in some of the places you've worked in the past in healthcare?
Definitely. And it's funny because it's, when you start hearing DEI, right, or DEIB, DEIA, like there's just so many ways that it's being termed. A lot of the work that I was doing, it was rooted in it. Like, it's like how I approach matters with teams, or when I was creating policies, was already doing the work, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's like I've been involved, like, working in the nonprofit space, I would say for about like 15 years. So a lot of this was something that I just, just worked in. So when it started becoming like you're starting to see, roles that are specific to DEI, or everything is just focusing, on DEI, for me, I was like, wow, okay, I'm in a decent space because, I have an understanding of it, but I'm actually studying for certification, and it's intense work. Like there is,
Really?
the traditional, in a sense, like I'm just utilizing that loosely in the sense of, it's like we see everybody wanting to, like DEI is big with organizations,
Sure.
but how are they rolling it out? Right?
Hmm.
Because a lot of times it's just checking off those boxes. Like, yeah, we did a training, we did this, but it's like, but are you implementing those strategies? Are you taking a look at yourself? And that's where the work is,
Yeah.
and I've worked with organizations before where it's like, okay, you have to do that work and do the reflection. Are you contributing to this? And if you are, what can you do? Like, and support's needed, great, but what can you do to help undo that? Like what, it's just really starting to take a look at your own self and your own practices. And it's not the easiest thing. And that's where some people tend to get turned off. Or it's the fact that you're thinking it's just the big bang where it's like you could just start bit by bit. It's education,
Right.
and just leading by example. That's what I tell everybody. It's just you can't just push it. You've got to lead by example.
DEI is so often looked at as a light switch issue. And by that, I mean, you just flip a switch, you have a training, you say that, hey, we're an inclusive workplace, and then suddenly the hope is that you become an inclusive workplace. And DEI is a long process of really making a cultural shift in your workplace to make it a more inclusive, more equitable environment where all are welcome and all feel welcome and safe within it. But as just to speak with what you were saying, it does require a ton of self-reflection. It's not about training alone or training others to be more inclusive. It's about a process of introspection and saying, oh, wow, I've been acting in a way that is privileged or biased uh, unintentionally. And most of the time it's unintentional, but I need to work towards changing that. And it's going to take some work. I have to have some really hard conversations around this area, maybe own up to some of the mistakes I've been making if I want to make these changes. And that's sort of the first process to me, first step of this of looking at making an environment more inclusive is taking an inventory of where you're at and then maybe making some amends and having some conversations to sort of acknowledge, hey, this is what's been going on. And I'm recognizing now that that wasn't right. I'm going to take ownership of it. How can we change this together?
100%. That's it.
But,
Because that's,
oh, no, go ahead.
go right ahead.
No, but I was going to say that I don't know, you just bring up such a great point that I think it's so commonly used. And I think the biggest complaint that we hear, if I'm reflecting back on it, like the main thing that I hear people say when they complain about DEI initiatives is that it's a box checker. Their company's treating it like a box checker.
Mhm.
And you brought that up almost right away. It just seems like it's such a common complaint that we hear.
It is. And what's interesting too is so many people think that it's okay if we're looking at, it's like we're trying to have an inclusive environment where we're okay, how are we, it's crazy because once you start peeling away the layers, like it just comes down to how are you how are you terming your job descriptions, right? Like what words are you using within your job descriptions? Because typically, like for leadership roles, you might see like, a go-getter or
Hmm.
aggressive or words like that, where in some cultures that's not what leadership is, right? Like, it's
Right.
like those sorts of, like, that sort of characteristic or behavior is not, something that would be um painted in a positive light. And there's just so many there. You go down like like it's a rabbit hole when you really want to go in there. But simply looking at it from that perspective of people are maybe thinking, well, it's like if we're trying to really try to market ourselves, or promoting our roles and looking, we need to start looking at capturing more of like an African American demographic, or looking like at employees that are like Asian. Like you're looking at the breakdown of your employees. It's like, hang on a second, you can't, like if you're especially living in Maine, that's
Hmm.
predominantly, it's, I'm the minority here. But look at your practices internally in your organization. Like, what are your hiring practices? Are you
Right.
finding that, it's, you have plenty of qualified candidates on the outside, but no, this person has been with the organization, they've got a tie to X, Y, and Z, community, all of this, like they're going to get the role. Is that, and I've seen that, it's like
Hmm.
not only here, but in other places you see that and you hear about it. And it's like, that's what you're talking about. That's part of it as well. And that often gets overlooked, is
Right.
what your process looks like internally.
I agree. So you and I have been going through quite a bit of a transformation recently ourselves. And, we're talking about organizations doing some reflection and the people within organizations doing some self-reflection and introspection, and taking an inventory of where we're at, so to speak. You and I have been in a similar boat recently, as we've both left our jobs and our careers early in this year. I'm curious for you, and you and I have had some conversations around this, but where does the process start for you? How do you make that transition from one career to a new one? And what are some of the emotions that you've been experiencing as you left one career? What has come up that you didn't expect?
Great question.
Hmm.
And I think it's changing. It's probably changing right now as I speak. But for, I think for like my change and why it happened was I didn't feel fulfilled,
Hmm.
right? Because it's like when you're in, when you're operating, or it's like you're in structures, like especially with healthcare, it's constantly changing, it's evolving. And at the end of the day, I was like, you know what, I don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel like I'm contributing to a solution. I just
Hmm.
feel like I'm a part of the problem, being administration. And here's like everything that you got to do, and I will help you with X, Y, and Z.
Sure.
But that's ultimately what it came down to. And I was just truly fortunate that as I had this thought going on, it's like, what do I do? What is my next move? Um, that, very fortunate that a contact that I had for quite some time, that's a consulting firm, just reached out and said, listen, I know you're going to school for this. This is a pretty decent, like, it sounds like a good fit. And I sat on it, sat on it, sat on it. It was the best decision I ever made, because I'm truly fortunate being able to step away from a
Yeah.
full-time space, being able to step in something, like part-time, and really focus on the well-being aspect of it, and really develop like the learning and development edge of it, and start to build that skill set. But it's been challenging because I've always saw myself down the road working for myself. Always enjoyed doing consulting, and it's like ChangeWorks Consulting is,
Sure.
my company that I have right now. But really figuring out what's my niche, like what do I
Hmm.
do? Where do I go? Um, and I just love working with different people, different environments. And now it's that opportunity, as we're in school, to start exploring, as we start doing the field work, different industries. Because there was a period of time where I felt like, you know what, I'm done with healthcare.
Yep.
I'm done with it, right? Like I'm
Yep.
stepping away from it. But the passion's still there. It's just finding, like, okay, where is that spark, right? Like, it's that's really what I'm trying to do. But the process itself is difficult, because um, it was a wild ride that led me to the decision. it was a learning experience, but so thankful that we had the conversation we had, because I
Yeah.
thought, okay, once I made the transition, it was just going to be easy peasy. Like you're just going to be humming along. No,
Yeah.
there were days of just you're questioning your decision, you're questioning your own ability, you're questioning like like you're so used to a routine, and I've still tried to maintain it. I'm still up at 4:30, still doing what I got to do, except, I'm not going to the office.
Yep. You get up at 4:30.
I do.
My God.
Come on.
I don't go to bed until like right before that.
I'm in bed by like 6:30. I'm like a 70-year-old.
Oh my gosh. My day doesn't even, I mean, seriously, I don't think 6:30 is I'm not even home for another couple hours, maybe 2, 3 more hours.
To be
Uh,
young again.
I don't know that I'm that much younger than you. No, but you brought up so many different points there that I think are so important. And we look at the process of change and personal change, and something that we've learned a lot about as we're going for this doctorate is that we can't remove the human side of the change process, right? So we kind of look at every change from a systematic view of like, well, if you just do this, you just do that, and do that, and you're going to have a successful change. And then every change process or everything that we're learning about has these like human emotion wrenches thrown into them throughout the change, where you have to sort of battle this resistance. What we don't think about is that when we're going through our own personal changes, how we're going to have our own emotional wrenches of resistance thrown into our change process.
Mhm.
And it is totally not what I expected to deal with. I had this great vision in my mind of what the change is going to look like, exactly what I'm going to implement, how I'm going to do it. And what I didn't expect was how awful some days I was going to feel, how great some days I'm going to feel. My fears were going to come up. I kept having this, and still do sometimes, this thought process that's related to like a movie where you know how certain actors or actresses get typecasted, like they play an iconic role and then they get typecasted in that role forever. I keep thinking like, not that I was iconic, but that I'm going to be typecast in my old identity, my old role forever. And as no one is going to embrace me in this new role I'm trying to play or that I'm working towards playing in this new career. And this fear that I'm stuck in a box forever and I can't escape the field that I'm within, which as time is going on, that's unraveling. But that was a fear that kept coming up for me that I didn't expect. I never even thought of. It's such a interesting human process to go through change and to navigate. And I understand now why people are so resistant to big changes, small changes, whatever it may be, because it honestly sucks. It sucks.
It does. And you just hit it there saying like, it's just you're typecast, right? But at the end of the day, you're starting to learn who you are. It's like, you might feel that way, but we know Blake is a great person. Blake is very smart. Like, it's like I could, we can go on here, right? But at the end of the day, you have so many incredible skills that could be transferred into so many different other places than
Mm,
what you were so used to doing. That was what I had to start realizing was because this is what we were talking about, where I didn't know. I got so lost in just climb the ladder, climb the ladder, climb the ladder, just go, 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 that I completely lost sight of who I was. And that's scary. When I remembered having that moment like a few days into um just doing the part-time thing and stepping away, where I literally had an anxiety attack. And like, my girlfriend's just talking me off the ledge, and I'm like, I don't know who I am. And she's just like,
mm,
it's okay. Like, it's just like, just own this,
mm-hmm,
relax, like just own it, breathe through it. But that was wild for me because I never experienced like, just that sort of like where it stops you and you have that moment of panic. And, there still are those days where you have that momentary, like, just lapse, but it's all a process. It's all healing. It's all that self-discovery. And I think the beauty in this too is, I don't know how you're feeling about it, but I'm throwing myself into environments that I never would have imagined, like public speaking, like throwing together like a proposal, sending it out. I'm like, well, when the
Hmm.
heck did I ever think I'd be doing that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the exciting part is that we are now in a process of self-discovery. And you brought up a great point earlier, is that we think that I know I mentioned being typecast, but that we're going to be stuck in a certain type of role for a while. And you brought up though that we do have all these skills and we have all these abilities and these talents that we've gained along the way that never went away. And so when we question ourselves, who are we? The reality is that the weight of the question is a lot heavier than the answer. And we already know who we are. We are somebody that's not defined by a specific role or even a specific industry. It's just that we've been attaching that identity mentally to that industry when the reality is that we are someone far different than that and we bring our talents wherever we go to whatever industry we go into. It's just hard to see the forest through the trees when you first get out because you only imagined your world within one particular industry that feels comfortable and familiar to you.
Mhm.
So then you
Yep.
start navigating outwards and then all of a sudden the spirit of adventure comes in. And that's where I hope you're here or getting there. I'm, I would say most days, not every day, but most days I am now in the spirit of adventure, like the childlike wonderment place of I have an opportunity here to explore whatever it is I want to do. I'm going to apply for that TED Talk. I'm going to reach out to this person for an interview. I'm going to write this blog post. I'm going to reach out to this person for a job. I'm going to, whatever it is, I'm just going to explore and see what I love. I can honestly say for me at this point in my life, this is the first time I've ever not had a boss, not ever had a business partner or somebody else that can dictate any part of my life. Of course, my wife and everybody in my family is very important to me, so their opinions matter. But career wise, this is the first time where I can say, Blake, what do you want to do? You have full ownership, figure it out. And I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation right now where I can take some time to do that.
Mhm.
Which, by the way, we're talking about DEI and all that before. I do recognize that not everybody is in a situation where they can take some time to explore what they want to do. So I'm not saying this advice applies to everybody. Um, but it also, there was a lot of fear that told me that I was not in a situation to be able to explore. And turned out after looking at finances and talking to a good accountant, I was in a decent situation. I budgeted. I'm doing whatever I have to do to take care of myself in this meantime, taking little side jobs or whatever, and figuring out a path towards growth for myself that with towards a future that I can feel confident and fulfilled by.
I think that's it. Like you just hit a point in your life where,
Mm.
it's like and it was interesting. I was having a conversation with my mom about it. She's like, yeah, it's like you just hit this point. She's like, you're at that age. I'm like, I know, I'm old, 45. And it was just everything started to kind of, like losing friends at a young age, like just all of these things that were just, it was just, you're starting to see this pattern. I'm like, man, life is just, it goes, it's fleeting. It's not, nothing's guaranteed. Like tomorrow's not guaranteed. So why deny yourself of any potential opportunity? Like why hold yourself back? And that's what I found I was continually doing was, you know what, like just it's that little voice in the back of your head that's holding you back. And my husband was just like, listen, we'll figure it out. Like we can figure this out. Just do what you got to do.
Hmm.
Just put yourself first, take care of yourself, do what you need to do. And I was very fortunate for that. But agreed, it's not for everybody. I mean, I'm panicking. Full disclosure, panicking. That's the state that I'm in today, just panic. But you'll get through it. And I think that's also the beauty in it as well, is you're self-reliant, not like you weren't before, but
Yes.
it's like you're your own boss, you're your own, it's just like you've got to figure out where that next client, that next,
Mm-hmm.
opportunity is coming from. You've got to be hunting it down.
I love
Um,
the idea of having our back against the wall, which maybe this is like some psychotic part of me, but I love the idea of having our backs against the wall and going, I got to figure this out. I got to survive. I want to fight for myself. It's very confidence building in a weird way.
mhm. It is. It is. It's confidence building. It's also like pan crapping at the same time. But
Yeah. I'm also going to admit too that trust me, I have plenty of nights where I'm like just about to fall asleep. And then it's like, you have this much in your bank account. That's only going to last this long. Like, you're not going to be able to, you need a job. You're going to be working at Cheesecake Factory next week. Like, like I do want to give you a reminder. Um, you, I don't want to apply my experience to your experience. Um, but I'm your senior in this change process. So no, no, one of the things that I felt like I was doing was filling my time with meaningless tasks because I felt that if I stayed busy, then I stay important.
Mhm.
And the reality was is that I was just wasting my energy and time on trying to feel busy and feel like I'm contributing something. And I wasn't actually getting anything done. And the narrative I kept telling myself is that you're doing nothing. You're doing nothing now. You don't have a job. You better do something. You better do something. And I'm grateful to my wife who looked at me one day and she just goes, you're getting your fucking doctorate. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? Like, you're not doing nothing. You're working like 8 hours a day on school. What are you talking about? You are doing something. You are enough. It's fine. So I
Yep.
just want to remind you, and I know that doesn't speak to everybody because not everybody's going for a doctorate, but I do want to remind you on those days where you feel like you're not making any forward progress, you're getting a doctorate right now. 1% or 1 or 2% of the world has a doctorate.
Let that sink in. 1 to 2% of the world will have incurred the
Yeah.
amount of debt we will be incurring. Look at me.
Yeah,
Look at
that's
me
true
like,
too. Yeah, right, exactly. But I'm a doctor.
yay. Sell a kidney
Excuse me,
now
Miss.
to pay it off.
Excuse me, Mrs. IRS. I am a doctor. I know I owe you 100,000 in back taxes. I'm a doctor.
I'm a
Trust me.
doctor. Well, doctor of what? I could help your organization.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
that's what I could do.
The IRS
But
probably can use that help.
there you go. That's it. Oh, there's your lead. I won't take it. Don't worry.
Yeah. All right. The only reason I'm going for my doctor, honestly, I mean, of course I want to help people, but the only reason is I just want to check that box when I go on a plane that instead of saying Mr. Blake Cohen, I wanted to say Dr. Blake Cohen. That's the only reason I'm spending this time and money to get this doctorate.
Yeah, the potential for an upgrade. Just
And
there you go.
exactly. And hotel reservations, restaurant reservations, when they call my
Exactly.
name, I want them to say Dr. Blake Cohen. That's all I
Dr.
care
Blake
about.
Cohen.
It's pure ego.
It's like what my husband says. He's like, man, he's like, who would have thought? I mean, he's like, people already question how did this end up? But
Yeah.
he's like, you write grants, you do all this. He's like, I can barely string a sentence together. But he's like, now, he's like, doctor. Okay, you're welcome.
Perfect. You got credibility then. I can imagine being on a plane and there's like one of those situations where they're like, is there a doctor on board? Someone's having a serious medical emergency, and I could stand up and be like, yes, I am a doctor. Can you help? Well, it depends on the context. We have to look at this in the deeper underlying issues of what's going on here and look at really more of the systemic problems that are occurring before we address the immediate presenting concerns and symptoms of the problem. They're like,
What
can you sit?
framework are we going to utilize?
Yeah, yeah. Can you sit back down? Is there any other doctors on this plane that actually don't give
Oh
us
my
a
God.
theoretical and philosophical answer? All right. Well, I
Oh
know
my
you've got to
God.
go. I'm glad that we just got a chance to just sit here and talk a little bit. And I hope people got something out of this and understand that the change process isn't pretty, but it's worth it. And if it's between protecting ourselves and our future and giving ourselves a glimmer of possibility in our life and towards our happiness, I think it's worth going through the fears and uncertainty and emotions of change.
100%. And it's like you have one life, live it. And it was interesting because my best friend, like when I was just constantly just, I don't know what to do. She's like, listen, just jump because you'll grow your wings on the way down. I was like,
Mm,
okay.
I
She's
love
like, if
that.
not, I'll be there to catch you.
Yeah. It's
Thank you.
very
At
strong.
least you know people have your back, right? But it's
Yeah.
it's true. It's true. But it's a
No, I love
process.
that. I will say that is something that I know you got to go, but I'm going to keep this short.
Oh, good.
I was listening to a podcast. Do you know who Sean Hayes is?
Yes.
Comedic. He was from Will and Grace.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about some big change that he was going through in his career. And he said what gave him the courage to go through the change was the fact that he's loved. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, I'm like, wow, I don't think I would have the courage to go through this big life change process if I wasn't loved by people in my life. And whether it's my wife, my family, my dog, whatever it is, having that love gives us the energy and the courage to make these big changes in our life because we know that we're going to be okay no matter what because we have connections and relationships with people who care about us.
100%. And the key is just don't, always remember that and don't take advantage of it.
Mhm. Talk about being privileged, like just to
Mm-hmm.
be, we're so lucky to have people in our lives who support and love us and care about us enough to
100%.
support us through the hard times.
Yeah. No, and that's the key is when it's really sucking, when you're really at your ugliest, when they're there, like, no, you got this. Come on. Get up, put
Yeah.
on those big girl panties.
Yep. I'm
Let's do it.
constantly
So
reminded to put on my big girl panties. Constantly. That is every day. That's what I wake up to.
every day I put them on because I'm the
Yeah,
workplace wanderer.
exactly. I'm like, I'm the superhero that wears big girl panties.
The big girl panties. So,
Yeah.
okay. Nobody has to know. It's an inclusive environment. There you go.
I was trying to think of the name for the company that I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Workplace Wanderer name, the new consulting company. It's going to be Workplace Wanderers because I'm hoping to build it out to an agency consulting firm. And
Mm-hmm.
I think my catchphrase will be we wear big girl panties. So thank you
I
for
get a
that.
cut. You're very
Yep,
welcome.
you get a cut. Yes. I will give you 0.01% of all of our proceeds, but it will be given in the form of Victoria's Secret gift cards because we can all buy more big girl
Big girl
panties.
panties.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank
Where can
you.
people find you? If they want to reach out and they want to talk to you, where can they find you?
Yes, you could find me on LinkedIn. It's Cristina Oliveri. And also Changeworks Consulting, LLC.com. That is my site.
Nice.
And I look forward to, Blake, it's been a pleasure. And can't wait to see where this leads you.
Right back at you.
Yeah.
I am pumped about this too. I think the best part of our doctoral journey has been our cohort and watching each of us grow and change. It's just it's such a cool process. I'm loving it.
We're only
So
starting.
everybody, thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode and you're listening to this on one of the many podcast platforms that this podcast exists, go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. If you did not enjoy this podcast, just keep moving. I don't need you leaving a review. I don't care. Negative feedback is good. Leave me a 5-star review and then leave your negative feedback in the comments. That's how I'd like it. We're trying to grow the podcast, people. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, comment below some of your thoughts on what we discussed today. We'd love to hear your experience about change. And with that, we leave you. This has been another episode of The Workplace Wanderer. Thank you, everybody.